All right, guys, welcome back to Flash Part 2, Spring Cleanup Part 2. So this is Flying J, flash forward. He's a Flying J goat, which means he came from Flying J Farm. He's 10 years old now, so he is my old guy. And this is Part 2 of his Spring Cleanup series. Part 1, I talked about his genetics a little bit. I talked about what he brings to the table. I talked about why at 10 he's retired. I gave you all the information on his floppy ear. We talked about his coat, and we talked about the mechanics of owning bucks to breed and why. What we didn't talk about is how to pick a buck. And I think how to pick a buck is probably one of the more important topics, and it certainly probably can't be done justice the way I do it, right? Which is completely unscripted and just off the top of my head. But I'm going to try and do a little bit of justice to it. So, how to pick a buck. A wise breeder once told me, and this is stuck in my head for decades now, you know, a bad doe can be fixed, right? And what do they mean by that? It means if your doe has some faults or some things you want to do better, right? And you can look back at my my series on Jezebel, Lotus, and Sock Monkey, where there's improvement generation on generation. So a doe can be fixed, quote unquote. Not that individual doe, but the line from her and her kids can be improved on. And that's amazing, right? That's such a blessing to be able to do and to see, and it is so rewarding. However, a bad buck, can ruin your herd to the point that you can't fix it. And you think, well, that makes no sense. Why can you have a bad doe and not a bad buck? Well, you use your buck a lot more, right? Your buck contributes a lot more genetics to your herd than your doe does. Think about that for a second. If you breed a doe to a buck, you might get, let's call it twins, 2 kids. That's the pretty average. You can get more than that. You can get less than that, but twins. You get 2 goats with that genetic pairing. But you have, I don't know, if you're bigger than me, you have 20 does in your herd. And that buck has bred all 20 does. So each doe has contributed their genetics to 2 kids. Each buck has contributed their genetics to 10 times that, 20 times that, 30 times that, right? And then that buck is used in another generation and another generation, right? So your buck genetics go a lot farther. I keep wiping my face because I've got little hairs on it. Sorry. The pleasures of grooming. So each buck contributes much more of their genetics to your herd than the doe does. And that's critical to understand when you're making decisions, right? So when I'm looking at buying an animal, and it's actually been quite a long time since I bought an animal, but when I'm looking at buying an animal, I'm thinking about what that animal has that I want in my herd, what that animal has that I don't want in my herd, and making decisions based on the future of what that animal will do to my whole herd. Well, in the case of a doe, if I buy a doe and she grows up, and of course, when you're buying babies, you don't even know what they're going to look like yet. So you're taking a bit of a risk already. So you need to have an exit plan for that. But I'm looking at that baby and I'm saying, okay, this baby does everything I think it's going to do, and it's a doe and it doesn't come through. Well, you can take the good from that and improve upon it generation on generation. If it's a buck and it doesn't come through the way you think it will, what are you going to do, right? What's your exit plan? Because you don't want to breed that buck if it's not going to do the things you thought it was going to do. So when I look at an animal, right, the easy way is to buy an adult animal, and then you know exactly what you're getting. Sometimes that's not the way you want to run. Sometimes that's not ideal for your herd. And sometimes, like in my case, I want to use a buck for more years than just a few. And I don't want to have a whole ton of retired bucks on my farm because I have to maintain them. I have to feed them. I have to water them, right? Clean their stalls, maintain their pasture. And I want to keep my workload manageable. So I have a 10-year-old buck, I have a 5-year-old buck, and I have a 3-year-old buck. And that means I will only have one retired buck at a time, right? By the time my 5-year-old buck retires and my 3-year-old buck retires, as much as I love Flash, the reality is his lifespan isn't that long. And it's the same thing, with any animal, I think, in that sense, right? So I'm looking at what they're bringing to my herd, what I need to correct in my does. No animal is perfect, so you always need to correct something. What can you improve upon? Maybe correct is not the right word. Maybe improve upon is the better terminology. And so when I look at a buck, I want that buck to have everything, right? I want it to be able to improve coat quality, coat consistency, coat placement. I want it to be able to improve on its on the generation's ability to grow a coat, maintain a length of coat, have strong fiber, right, so that it doesn't break off. This guy being an exception at 10, heck, everything's going to break off, right? So that's what I'm looking at when I bring in a buck, and why it is so important to think about that when you purchase a buck, when you add a buck to your farm. It's also why philosophically, and I know that, again, I keep telling you how I make such terrible business decisions. I probably shouldn't be in business. So terrible business decisions. I maintain $3 here instead of leasing so that I don't introduce anything viral, bacterial, parasite-wise to my herd. Not the most cost-effective decision, especially given the size of my herd, right? So things like that are what I'm talking about, where if I were thinking with just a business hat on, I would not make that same decision. But I'm thinking more with the health and well-being of the animals, first and foremost, business second. So an intact buck of this breed can run upwards of $1,000, can run, let's call it between 500 and 1,000. There are some breeders that are selling their bucks for more than that, and they have earned that right to do so, and I don't begrudge them at all. My bucks, when I sell a buck, go for between $500 and $800, right? They're coming from master champion lines. The does that they're bred to are not always master champions, though, so I take that into account. And I also take into account the fact that I don't release my bucks very often as bucks. I prefer to sell every baby boy that's born on this farm as a wether. And wethers sell for $250. They've been the same price since the day I started breeding. They'll probably remain the same price for the rest of my natural born life. And that barely covers the amount of feed that I put into them just in the few months that they're here while they're growing up. But they make the best pets. They make the best, absolute best companion animals. They have no sex hormones, right? They're castrated. They don't become bucky. They don't smell. They still grow an amazing coat because they're a boy and the boys get better coats than girls. And they just are, the best for everybody all around, especially for families with kids that are doing this more for pets or for 4-H. I don't want to price them out of the market. I don't want them to not be able to get this breed just because, they're rarer and they run a bit more expensive than some of the other breeds. And, this video may be outdated at some point. So if the pricing I'm quoting is outdated, sue me. Look at the year the video was made. I guess I should disclaimer that, right? But at any rate, so I don't sell bucks, intact bucks, unless I know why you're buying them and I know what you're getting them for, and I'm able to talk to you about the fact that they're going to, or they have the potential to bring what you're looking for to your herd. So I mentioned in the last video with Flash, 95, possibly even 98% of the boys born on my farm are weathered and sold as wethers. Bad business decision, right? I'm costing myself money. I could sell them as bucks. But fundamentally, when I tell you that a bad buck can kill a herd, and shouldn't say that, a bad buck can ruin a herd is a better word. Certainly not going to kill a herd. That was not correct, but they can ruin a herd, right? It can take things and put more of their genetics in that herd that could deliver inappropriate traits. Could be anything: height, weight, stature. They're not elegant, they're more meaty. There's lots of reasons why you wouldn't want to breed your buck and bring that into your herd. And my firm belief is that there are so many amazing bucks in this world already that me selling you my buck, when you can go get an amazing master champion buck, or a buck that's from 2 master champion lines or generations, I don't want to push that on you. I'll help you find a breeder. There aren't a lot of them local here, but I'll help you if that's what you need for your herd. Now, if my buck can bring what you need for your herd, then I'm happy to work with you to sell you a buck. That pull a little bit, I'm sorry. But I won't do it on the regular. And I encourage every breeder that's out there to weather their bucks rather than look at them as a moneymaker. Oh, I know it's pulling. I'm sorry. All right. He may be done with this tolerance. We'll see. At any rate, so there are lots of breeders out there that will sell you a buck, not really care. And that's their prerogative. There's really, nothing wrong with it, right? If you're going to buy an animal and treat it right, that's all that really matters at the end of the day. But I also want you to buy an animal and have an animal that's going to do what you need it to do when it comes to breeding stock. So when it comes to breeding stock, oh, I know that's pulling. Why is that pulling so much, my bud? Let's see if we can stop that. All right, sorry, I got distracted because he's getting uncomfortable. I might have to cut this one short. We'll see. Let me see if I can work different areas. He just may have lost his patience for being handled, and that's okay. So anyway, I was really kind of almost finished with that discussion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, right? Like, do you believe that it's the buyer's responsibility to figure things out, or is it the seller's responsibility to figure things out with you? In my case, I truly believe that it's the seller's responsibility to figure things out with you. I think it's the seller's responsibility to recognize that not every animal born should go into a breeding program, especially when it's a buck. I think it's important for you to ask that question. How many bucks have you sold? If they're just pumping out bucks out into the world, to me, that says that you don't care. You don't care about the breed as much. You're not looking for the best qualities. You're not looking and assessing your breeding program. You're breeding for either volume, so that you have a lot of animals to sell, or you're breeding for, the most you can get out of an animal, right? The highest price point. That's why I say, it's probably a terrible business decision on my part, but it's about the animals for me. I will not even offer a buck from a first time pairing because I don't believe that you can legitimately sell a buck from a breeding pairing that you've never seen progeny from. Think about that for a second, right? If your buck and your doe have never been bred to each other and the kids are just born, how do you know what they're going to do? Do they have potential? Of course. You look at the adults and you say, oh, okay, well, they have potential. But until those babies grow up and you know whether they realized that potential or not, how could you possibly sell a buck from that pairing to be a breeding animal when you have no idea what it's going to end up being? What if it doesn't? What if that pairing happened to, instead of putting the best with the best together, put the worst with the worst together? It could happen. And, you know, now you've put that buck out in the world as a breeding animal, and that's propagating that genetic potential mess, right? So first time pairing for me, never ever sell a buck. Second time pairing, once I have seen what the kids can do, what they've grown up like, what they look like, then I'll think about selling a buck. But, you know, from the minute that that boy is born, I'm looking at it critically. And if I can find a single fault with it, its ears are too big, its ears are too wide set, it's not growing coat the way I want it to, it's not growing coat fast enough, it's, you know, it doesn't stand 100% correct on the top line, anything that I can find in a baby boy, that will make my decision for me instantly. Okay, it's going to be a wether, it's going to get sold as a pet, I'm not going to get as much money for it, which is absolutely fine by me. It's going to do and be the right thing for this breed, for its new family, and for the future of the mini silky fainting goat. So I'm not quite done with Flash's grooming, but as you can see, he's about had enough. And I don't blame him. I don't push them. I am going to end up finishing the surface here, but I'm probably not going to do his underbelly in this session, which also needs done. But I am going to cut the video here for multiple reasons. One being he's probably going to start to get complainy. And two is it's already running long and I've said my piece. I would love to know your thoughts about my practice of weathering most of the boys born on the farm. I'd love to know your thoughts about the practice of selling animals, understanding what you're selling and how you're selling it, and my practice of maintaining a small herd. I open these discussions. I love the commentary. I love to have a polite discourse about it. And I love your opinions. I learn from you guys just as much as you're learning from me, I suppose. So drop a comment, leave a like. Every little bit that you do on the channel helps, whether it's a like, a comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all the YouTube things you're supposed to do. Do me a favor and do them. It really helps. And someday maybe it'll put some cash in the farm and we'll be able to say that they're earning their keep through these videos. That's a long time away. Don't sweat it if you're not. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of the community, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.